next speaker, Michelle Jamer from NIST. So she's going to talk to us about some exciting work with thin films and control of magnetism.
All right, thank you for the introduction. So I'm currently a postdoc at the NIST Center for Neutron Research. So this work really focuses on my side of the neutrons. But there is another, a really key person in this, and that is Colin, our mentor, and he grows our samples at UCLA. So this is a collaboration done with the TAM Center and Jane Chang at UCLA. And I would always like to thank the special staff at the NCNR, especially Tanya Dax and the electricians, for ensuring that I don't get electrocuted at all during this work. So I'm sure this is not the first time any of us have seen this diagram, but we do see that there is an exchange between the strain and magnetization and the electric properties of our multiferroic materials. And so there are two types of multiferroic systems. There's been a lot of research at this conference concerning EFO, but what I'm really interested in, and the TAM Center is really interested in, is the strain-coupled systems. So this way we can tune the magnetic and electrical properties in order to be well-positioned for realistic devices in the next couple of months rather than in the next few years. So in this research, we use permalloy and galvanol. And we want to really exploit galvanol's property, which is a large magnetostrictive constant. And this is a maximum of 400 parts per million per Ørsted. And this is really at the high end of galvanol's spectrum. A more realistic number would be around 50 to 70 for the way that we grow galvanol thin films. And the reason why galvanol is very well positioned is that it has complementary properties to terphenol D. But if you ever try to grow terphenol D, it is very hard to get the dysprosium into your lattice. So that is why galvanol is probably a more realistic goal for devices. Although there's a lot of work done at the TAM Center, which focuses on growing terphenol D. And we also want to exploit permalloy's properties. So permalloy is a very soft ferromagnetic material. And when it was layered with iron, cobalt, nickel, it took a really hard ferromagnet and it made the magnetization softer. So it reduces the energy that it would need to actually flip the magnetization. So galvanol is a hard magnetic material. So by layering it with permalloy, we can actually soften the magnetic properties of galvanol. And our most eventual goal is to make this for possible devices and high frequency applications on the gigahertz scale. And this is mainly for antennas and sensor applications. So if we have our magnetoelastic and magnetostrictive material on PMMPT, and then we apply voltage, we really want to know what happens to our system magnetically. And so there's a lot of open questions with this material system. Does the moment rotate as we expand the lattice? Is there domain information? And does the moment coherently rotate as a function of depth? And can we predict how the magnetization will change as a function of voltage? And these are the questions that I will answer in my presentation. So the sample preparation is done by Colin, our mentor at UCLA, and he sputter deposits the thin films to optimize the minimal residual strains and stresses in the system. And our galvanol to permalloy ratio is 4:1. So we have 20 nanometers of galvanol in these 4 layers, and then 7 nanometers approximately of our permalloy. And we grow with platinum and titanium as a seed layer to reduce the stresses from the PMMPT, because as you know, PMMPT is very rough. And it also acts as a conductive layer. So this way when we apply voltage, it gets applied pretty uniformly throughout the whole entire thin film stack. So our first step was to look at X-ray diffraction measurements. So is there a change in the galvanol and permalloy lattice as we apply the voltage? And here we see the PMMPT X-ray diffraction pattern, and we see that there's actually a physical change in the peak position. And this corresponds directly to an expansion of our C-LAS parameter. And we see that is increasing as a function of voltage to a maximum of 0.08%. And when we look at the galvanol 220 peak, it increases its intensity as a function of voltage. So we're increasing the galvanol intensity by approximately 10% as we increase the voltage. And this corresponds directly to the crystallite size, because as it increases the intensity, the peaks are actually narrowing, thereby expanding the galvanol in the lattice. So the first step beyond going with X-ray diffraction is what are the bulk magnetic properties, and we measure this with in situ pulling with SWID magnetometry. So as we strain the lattice, we see that at 0 volts, we have a hard axis of magnetization. But as we apply the voltage, the strain changes the anisotropy axis and thereby rotates the magnetization in our multi-layered thin film stack. And when we look at the field applied perpendicularly to strain, we see the opposite behavior. So we know that by changing the strain, we are changing the magnetic properties, but we really want to measure how. And can we actually measure the rotation of the magnetic moment as a function of voltage? And we do that with polarized neutron reflectometry. And as you may have seen yesterday, we have our thin films, and we have 2 separate nuclear scattering length densities. And if we're measuring in the non-spin flip regime, in which we have an incident neutron in the spin up, and we polarize the detector to only detect spin up neutrons and spin down, and polarize the detector to measure the spin down neutrons, we can actually measure the nuclear difference between the 2 thin films and the magnetic difference parallel to the applied field. The spin flip is slightly different, in which you have a positively polarized neutron and you're measuring the negatively polarized neutron. And for this, you can actually measure the in-plane projection of the perpendicular magnetization. So basically, you can extrapolate what the angle of rotation is from the applied field with this. Polarized neutron reflectometry, you can only really measure the in-plane magnetization of the moment. So we measured silicon baseline samples in order to extrapolate what our scattering length densities are for galvanol and permalloy at these compositions. And what we see here is that our non-spin flip pattern for the plus plus and minus minus, and we extrapolated this this pattern, which corresponds to our depth profile for both the nuclear and the magnetic section for each layer. And then we reduced the field to 1 millitesla and measured the spin flip scattering. And what we see is that if this is our applied magnetic field, right here, our spin is actually canting by 16 degrees. And this is due to galvanol's thrown-in anisotropy. So galvanol always has this in-plane anisotropy. So we actually measured it with the silicon sample. And our best fit models indicates that all layers through this 100 nanometer thin film stack is rotating by 16 degrees from the applied field. So then we took our 100 nanometer thin film stack and put it on PMMPT. And this is our non-spin flip reflectometry pattern, and we extrapolate this profile for both the structure and magnetism. And here we see that we do have a rougher sample, and that's due to the PMMPT. And then when we measure the spin flip scattering, where we have the 2 different polarized neutrons, we see that at 100 volts, this is our spin flip scattering, and as we increase our voltage to 200 and then 400, we see a drastic increase in our spin flip scattering. And what that corresponds to is that if this is our applied field, we see that at 0 volts it's canted by 20 degrees, but then when we apply 400 volts, it's at negative 46. So we get a net rotation of 25 degrees. And it behaves linearly as a function of voltage. And this is a coherent rotation of our moment throughout our stack. And there's no domain formation, which is pretty impressive that we are able to extrapolate where our moment is going to be as a function of voltage. We also want to see if there is anything with the anisotropy, so we rotated the sample by 45 degrees as such, and we see a similar change in the spin flip, but it is actually a decrease in the intensity. So we still get the coherent rotation of the moment as we change our measuring axis, And we also see that there was no domain information. So in conclusion, we used polarized neutron reflectometry and in situ whole squid, and we saw that the magnetization indicated that the layers were rotating as a function of voltage. We actually went ahead and were able to extrapolate the degree to which our magnetic moment changes as a function of voltage using polarized neutron reflectometry, and we didn't see any evidence of domain formation in our sample as we applied the voltage. Thank you for your attention.
This talk is open for questions.
So your final goal is, by the way, everybody who hasn't been there, TANs is ferroelectrics. They're outside the edge of the universe, so we're trying to do this. Are you trying to make a modulator or a reflector or launch magnetic? What is the end point of this stack?
So for this project, they really want to make a device for antennas and doing the switching.
You want to explain how that works?
I am not 100% familiar. I really just do the neutron side, so I know a little bit of what they're trying to do, but it's mainly Colin's PhD thesis.
Any other questions for Michelle? All right. Well, if not, then let's move on. Thank you. All right, so our next speaker is Sergey, and he's going to tell us a bit about atomic, he's going to tell us a little bit about short-range order and its effects on PMN. So, Sergey?
Thank you. First of all, thank you to the organizers. I will start with some short, brief introduction where I will remind about what are relaxers. When I search internet, I found that actually this is not correct word for us, because relaxers are a device for a neck or for the back to have pleasure. But ferroelectric relaxers, this is kind of pretty different stuff, and still having a lot of problems in understanding. So we know that first feature of relaxers attracted people is the rounded peak of dielectric permittivity and with strong dispersion. When Landau was shown this, he said actually just make the samples cleaner and we will have just normal ferroelectric peak, but what we already have 70 years and our samples are still not that clean. We don't have polarization on lowering this temperature, and this is exactly what we have, for example, in antiferroelectrics. Just consider lead zirconate, which also has a big peak found by Schirner, and there is no polarization below it, and also that peak is mostly relaxation. So next feature is the declination of birefringence from linear temperature dependence at some temperature, which we know now is called Burroughs temperature. And finally, the non-ergodic nature of PMN and relaxers. If we cool the system under the field, then we have polar phase, ferroelectric phase. But if we cool without field, the low temperature phase is not ferroelectric. And this is exactly what we have, for example, in sodium niobate, as found by Cross. Also, I recall that there is an example of flat titanate under pressure. We can miss polar phase just because of also non-ergodic nature of lead titanate. I skip here Neutron scattering data because my topic will be away of that topic, of those data. And I turn now to the chemical order. So here, many of you know that Davis and Abbas suggested that PMN has short-range chemical order, and actually what they did, they doped PMN with lanthanum, and that lanthanum doped PMN showed this short-range order, which looks like rock salt order. One side is occupied by niobium, and the other, we will call it B average, and B average is consists of 1/3 of niobium and 2/3 of magnesium, and they are supposed to be disordered. The influence of this short-range chemical order on physical properties theoretically were studied by Sylvia Tinte, but we will focus mostly on the influence on the physical properties of the degree of this disorder, and this point has been missed yet. So in this study we use inverse Monte Carlo approach, which allows us to generate alloy files which corresponds to a particular magnitude of the short-range chemical order, and then we use these files in order to calculate properties and to see the influence of this order on these properties. Before that, I will show you what are the properties of the totally disordered PMN as we calculated them from Monte Carlo method. So we use effective Hamiltonian method. It includes local modes. Local modes are centered on lead, and strains are centered on magnesium and niobium. Also, we have sigma, which is alloy parameter responsible for distribution, niobium and magnesium in the lattice. And we, of course, add random fields of short-range order, and they relate the charges surrounding each of the lead ion with the field on this ion. So here you see one of the results obtained with this method. This is dielectric permittivity versus temperature, and error bars, they show how result depends on different chemical configurations. So we considered 30 chemical configurations, so 30 alloy files, here 18 by 18 by 18, and then we averaged the results. So this is configurational averaging over these results, and you see that below, say, 400, we have large error bars, so there is strong dependence on chemical configuration. The inverse of the dielectric permittivity, shown in blue here, has a linear portion until burst temperature from high temperature, and so this is Curie-Weiss law, and continuation of this straight line looks at 400, which is known as T star now. Another point, the deviation of the linear dependence starts at the Burns temperature, which is at about 600. And these calculations did not show any polarization at low temperatures below this peak. This is zero field heating after field cooling. So we cool the system under the field, and the low temperature phase is ferroelectric. We have polarization here, and then we heat the sample, and polarization decreases. There is some temperature at which polarization drops down, and this is called depolarizing temperature. So we reproduce this property as well. This is comparison of Sherrington-Kirkpatrick parameter. We got it from this formula by Kirkpatrick and Sherrington. Because we could do this because we know susceptibility. And then just by fitting with this formula our susceptibility, we could find Q, the Sherrington-Kirkpatrick parameter. On the other hand, we calculated Edwards-Anderson parameter, which is the average of the local mode over the Monte Carlo steps. Then we take squares of these averages and average over all sides of our supercell. Here you see comparison of these two parameters, and I would say that they are practically the same, which means that in our case the meaning of Kirkpatrick-Sherrington parameter and Edwards-Anderson parameter, this is microscopic calculation, but this is macroscopic calculation, and they are practically the same. So this is good for this theory, and we can say what is the order parameter. On the other hand, we did calculation of 2D and 3D correlations, and in 2D correlations, this red and green correspond to positive values of correlation, and this is ferroelectric correlations. So at comparatively small distances, dipoles interact ferroelectrically, but this blue corresponds to negative values of correlation. So at further distances, the correlation is anti-ferroelectric, and we believe this is very important for PMN. And here you see that corresponding Fourier components, they correspond to the Q vectors lying in the gamma M line close to gamma. So these are Q vectors are small. And these Fourier components, starting from about 400 K, start increasing, and you see that this also can be considered as an order parameter. So now I turn to the chemical order, short-range chemical order. To generate these alloy configurations, we use so-called Cowley parameters. Cowley parameters alpha j are defined as 1 minus 2 times Pj. Pj is the probability of occupation of, say, niobium ion close to B average ion. And J equal to 1, 2, and 3 corresponds to the first neighbor, second neighbor, and third neighbor. So first shell, second shell, and third shell. Here, alpha, which we employed, they start from 0 and spread until 1 with step 0.1. And corresponding P1, P2, and P3 are shown in this table. So for 0 alpha, the occupations are totally random. For alpha equal to 1, the occupation corresponds to perfect rock salt structure. But recall that one of the 111 layers in the structure is still random, so it is still relapsing. And I did not say we, like in the previous case, for each alpha we calculated results for 30 different configurations, alloy configurations, and then we reached the result for these configurations. So here you see the result for the electric susceptibility for different alpha, calculated with the help of this cumulant and citations you see here at the right. So first of all, what we see that below 200 K, we see that some configurations have divergence in the dielectric permittivity, that is, they are ferroelectric, but not all of them, and mostly for large alpha, close to 1. But all the others are not polar, not ferroelectric. Also, what we see in the plot of the inverse susceptibility, when we increase alpha, Tc or T star, better to say, goes to higher temperatures. And pretty much, you see about 100 K from 0 to 1. This is a lot. And here, depolarizing temperature, the same story. When we increase alpha, we move depolarizing temperature to higher temperatures. We increase the depolarizing temperature. And the magnitude of the polarization also increases when chemical order parameter increases. And finally, this plot shows how our Fourier components change. They also increase, but not that much. So there is some change, some increase of the Fourier amplitudes. Here you see the collected data in one plot. So we have that Burns temperature, T star, and depolarizing temperature all increase when alpha increases. How to understand this? What we did, we calculated average, in some sense average, in the sense of theory of glass, average of the internal electric field on lead. So we defined this internal field by this formula, where EI is the electric field on a particular is lead ion, and then we sum over I and divide by the N lead, which is the number of the lead sites. So we see that the internal electric field decreases when alpha increases. And finally, the inset shows that if you plot all these three quasi-critical temperatures versus inverse internal field, then we have more or less the same behavior. That is, when these three temperatures, Burns temperature, T star, and depolarizing temperature increase, then this corresponds to the decrease of the internal electric field. In some sense, we can say that the system becomes more ferroelectric. And these are conclusions and acknowledgement. Thank you very much.
Talk is open for questions.
Thank you, Sergey. Nice work. I noticed on the picture when you show temperature dependence of the